Good afternoon. Today is Monday, the 30th of March, 2026, just after 1 o'clock. Welcome to UK Column News. I'm your host, Brian Gerrish. Delighted to have Ben Rubin with me in the studio.
Delighted to be here.
And what a busy news we've got today. Now, we're going to kick off with the good news. And the good news is a reminder that in our ad section, we're going to be talking about UK Column's 20th anniversary coming up in September. We've got the Easter holidays coming up, give you plenty of time to think about it. But we're also going to be talking about tickets on sale. So stay with us for that alone. Now, we've got a huge number of things happening in the world, lots of turbulence, lots of headlines. We're going to take a deep look today into the war, protests against the war. And essentially, Ben, you're going to be taking our audience into a closer look at the divide and rule tactics that are being used. We're going to have a look at the possible invasion of Kharg Island, which appears to be Trump's key target. But is it really Trump or is it Israel that's driving the agenda there? We're going to be taking a look at the government's compassionate interests in veterans and what that really means within a bigger political picture. Ben, you're having a look at the progressive Cabal, the socialist New World Order, effectively. We're going to be having a little look at missile problems, which are clearly affecting not only the Israelis, but the US. And Ben, you're ending today on a look at the BBC's new Director General and the amazing power politics around that. Quite extraordinary. Well, let's kick off with the president, or should I say, the King Trump. Let's have a little listen to what he's been saying.
But we've had regime change, if you look already, because the one regime was decimated, destroyed, they're all dead. The next regime is mostly dead. And the third regime, we're dealing with different people than anybody's dealt with before. It's a whole different group of people. So I would consider that regime change. And frankly, they've been very reasonable. So I think we've had regime change. I mean, you can't do much better than that.
So what a remarkable man. We just keep killing them till we get people we think we can deal with, the reasonable ones. And if they don't act reasonably, then we keep killing them. This is effectively what Trump has said, and he's repeatedly said it. But let's have a look at a little bit more detail here. He said, to be honest with you, my favorite thing is to take the oil in Iran. But some stupid people back in the US say, why are you doing that? But they're stupid people. This is quite a clue to what's going on in the Middle East, that basically it's get in and take the oil. Nothing really has changed much there, Ben. And if we add a little bit more, he also said this, maybe we take Kharg Island, maybe we don't. We have a lot of options. It would also mean we had to be there, he means in Kharg Island, for a while. And we'll add the next one. I don't think they have any defense. We could take it very easily. So Trump, at least, who we describe King of America there, because as we'll see very shortly, this is one of the key terms used in the protests. He's very cocky when he's talking to the media, but he changes his story. If he doesn't like anybody who's there in Iran, he's going to kill them. He's going to keep bombing them till they come round to his point of view. So this is vicious stuff, Ben, at the end of the day. And not surprisingly, there has been a backlash with demonstrations, particularly this weekend. Let's just have a little look at some of the demonstrations in the US. And this is a little composite clip. So there are a number of locations in the US in this clip. We're playing it with sound just to give a bit of impact for what was happening on the ground. Well, classic there. We mentioned sound. Of course, a lot of noise in those marches. Drums, bells, whistles, all sorts of things that you could hear, as well as the shouts of the people themselves. But clearly a lot of people desperately unhappy with what's going on. And as I say, that little clip was from across the US. It wasn't just confined to one major city. Now, of course, there were also protests going on in Israel. And if we just bring this on screen, we can see some of this, a headline in English, "No more feeding the war machine." But basically, as the Western protests were either dissolved or were manoeuvred into left-right divide, Jews were on the streets protesting against the war in Tel Aviv. Let's have a look at this little video clip.
War against Iran. Protesters oppose Israeli militarism. Protesters criticize Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, and the cops and protesters clash in Tel Aviv. So unrest in Tel Aviv, as there are hundreds of protesters who gathered to demonstrate against this Israel and US war against Iran in Tel Aviv on Saturday. They are against this war, many carrying signs opposing Israeli militarism and also criticizing the country's Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. The police and security forces moved to disperse the crowd shortly after the protests began, sparking clashes. And Israel's Home Front Command defensive policy currently mandates a limit of 50 people at outdoor gatherings as the conflict with Iran continues. The Tel Aviv protest marked the start of the fifth week of fighting in a war that appeared at risk of spreading further across the region.
Tahrir Square, the placards of these protesters share the same message: stop the war with Iran. Several hundred gathered in the center of Tel Aviv to protest the conflict on Saturday.
We are 4 weeks into the war, that nobody actually knows what is the aim of the war, because in the beginning they said we are against the missiles, against the nuclear, maybe to take down the regime in Iran, but after 2 weeks everybody understood that it's not going to happen.
These demonstrators hold Benjamin Netanyahu responsible for the war.
So you might be interested in why we chose those clips. Well, from Indian News and France 24, we had to go overseas because, of course, the BBC simply not reporting those demonstrations at all. And if we bring this up on screen over the weekend, I was searching on the BBC website for war protests in Tel Aviv. This is the sort of thing that came up. So we're going back to June 2024 with the Gaza war, 16 hours ago. That was back into Saturday. I would think now. Trump waging war 2 days ago. Why did US and Israel attack Iran? 3 days ago, UK petrol and diesel prices. So what the BBC is doing here is clearly supporting the war by its deliberate omission of any protest in Israel itself. And I'm going to say credit to those Israelis who were on the streets, even though quite severe clampdown by the Israeli government, limiting the number of people who can gather to 50 at any one time. Now, if we really want to know how public opinion is paying attention to what King Trump is doing, let's have a look at this little clip, which is an American comedy series called What's the Story?
Is that guy?
Who's that man? Ooh, it's Ireland.
Iran.
It's green.
PSA.
Okay, this is any airport in America right now,
Yeah.
and that's gas.
Yeah.
And that guy is fucked.
We're painted into a corner in Iran.
Also, I mean, it seems like a big story. You got gas prices, you got the Strait of Hormuz, you got the airports, you got all kinds of stuff.
The story is, with Iran fighting back and global economic catastrophe looming, it seems that President Trump has painted himself into a bit of a corner with this war, I guess we're still calling it.
It's an excursion.
Whatever the hell you want to call it. It is definitely a war we have already won, right?
Mm-hmm.
Or look, here's Caroline Levitt on Wednesday summing it up.
President Trump does not bluff, and he is prepared to unleash hell. Any violence beyond this point will be because the Iranian regime refused to understand they have already been defeated.
Well, yay.
Doesn't that sound like a threat from like Bane from Batman?
Yeah.
You refuse to understand. You have already been defeated.
Iran state TV says that Trump capitulated. There are no direct or indirect talks taking place with the Trump regime.
I'm not thrilled that I trust Iranian state TV more than I trust my president.
They want very much to make a deal. We'd like to make a deal too. If it goes well, we're going to end up with settling this. Otherwise, we'll just keep bombing our little hearts out.
Now, to the people in the relationship up here on the panel, is that an effective negotiating strategy?
So a pretty telling piece of video clip, because the humour went on a long time after this particular little clip. But it's clear people are not only seeing through what Trump's up to, they're taking the mickey, they're laughing at him. And I think this is a really, really powerful turnaround. But Ben, also demonstrations in UK, of course.
Demonstrations all over the place. Lots to protest at the moment, Brian, including Trump is just becoming more and more ridiculous. Those clips are just astonishing.
Astonishing, ridiculous, but very, very dangerous.
Absolutely, yeah. The most powerful man in the world. What could possibly go wrong? Anyway, let's head back to this side of the Atlantic and to central London on Saturday, where there was indeed a fairly big protest, which turned out for the Together Alliance. And this was about combating the rise of the far right. This is a rainbow coalition, some familiar names there. Stop the War, CND, got the UN flag flying high above the whole thing. Is this going to achieve much? I don't think so. And why is that? Because it's part of a divide and rule agenda. And I've spoken about this particular visual a couple of months ago. I've introduced it to essentially demonstrate the dividing lines that we're currently being forced into across the political and cultural discourse, or whether you're on the left or the right being, broadly speaking, white, masculine, native, rural, conservative, Christian who supports Israel, broadly speaking. And this is crude, by the way, but they have to operate in a crude fashion because no one fits into these neat buckets that they want us to fit into. And on the left, you have black, feminine, immigrant, urban, progressive, Islamic, who supports Palestine. And these warring factions have been embedded down into our society over the past several years. It's been going on for a lot longer than that, but it's becoming particularly pronounced, and nowhere less than in the, so should I say nowhere more so than in the political system. So if you think about some of the characters that we have on our TV screens on a regular basis, occupying high offices of state, Keir Starmer there on the left-hand side, the left wing versus Nigel Farage. On the right wing, the right-hand side, we go level down in the discourse. We have Zach Polanski, the new emergent and ascendant leader of the left, versus Tommy Robinson, the supposed folk hero and investigative journalist, who is basically used as a bogeyman for left-wing operatives to focus them and to scare them into action, basically. And then right down at the bottom level, probably get some people upset about this, but you've got the likes of Jeremy Corbyn, who is basically just been kicked into the long grass, not least by himself over the past 12, 18 months with this bizarre Your Party project. And I'm not even sure they've decided what the name of the party is going to be yet. They seem to be burning a lot of time and energy on kind of bureaucratic details and political stuff. And then on the right-hand side, I think a similar thing is being done via Rupert Lowe and Restore Britain, right? Because actually, if you look politically, neither Your Party nor Restore Britain figure anywhere in the most recent polling. So this came out from YouGov over the weekend. This is national voting intentions, and you can see Reform somehow remarkably still in the lead nationally, despite Farage's ongoing attempts to undermine the party that have been going on pretty much since the outset, actually. And then you can see below that Labour somehow still in the mix, despite Starmer's best attempts to discredit the party. But the real story here, I think, is Green. We are absolutely in the ascendant. And as I've spoken about previously, I see them as the chosen vehicle for elite policy, because the establishment is very much backing immigrant, urban, Islamic, not Palestine supporting, but that kind of demographic that exists in our major cities, increasingly in our major cities. The establishment views the future of the country, and that is very much, I think, playing out in terms of the level of support that they're getting, the level of coverage that they're getting. And the other parties, like your party and Restore Britain, they only figure down here in the other section. So the idea that yeah, exactly. It's a rounding error, essentially. The idea that Rupert Lowe is going to roll into Downing Street in 2029 as a triumphant new prime minister of the country, I mean, it's extremely far-fetched. Let's just put it like that. But these are the dividing lines that have been driven down into our society at a political level. And this will continue, no doubt, certainly in mainstream politics, but also down onto the street level as well. And we spoke back in September about the Unite the Kingdom March. This was Tommy Robinson's event held in central London on the 13th of September. Estimates of over 1 million people on the streets. But within days of this, a huge left-wing counter-protest had been announced, and that is the event that happened over this last weekend, and we got a short clip here showing us some of what happened on the ground.
Shut it down! 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 Come on! Shut it down! Racism! Shut it down! Fascism! Shut it down! Shut it.
So, Ben, this is control and manipulation of these demonstrations in order to get these divide lines that you're talking about.
Yeah, absolutely, yes. And the messaging extremely clear. Racism, shut it down. So that's essentially anyone who's nationalist.
Exactly.
Literally, yeah. It's any of you who are racist now. And the far right, shut it down. You know, and you could see on the banner at the front there that it was all about Farage and reform, and these are the Nazis, right? So they're keeping everything at that very kind of top level. There's no room for nuance here at all.
And labelling, everybody gets a label.
Absolutely, yes. Yeah, because it becomes tribalised. And then ultimately, I think Orwell said that the purpose of propaganda is to get one bunch of humans to stop seeing the humanity of another bunch of humans. I completely butchered that. It's not a direct quote, right? But it was just something along those lines. And that's exactly what we're seeing here. So these aren't people, these are far-right fascists, or these aren't people, these are left-wing Islamophiles, you know, like whatever the term might be. What else did we see over the weekend? So this absolutely remarkable sight of Zach Polanski there dancing with a bunch of male go-go dancers, and then Hannah the Spanner, the new MP for Gorton and Denton, you can see there just next to him. And I've got to say, I bet Keir Starmer was really jealous about this. I'd imagine Starmer
does he dance well, Ben?
Well, I'd imagine that he's probably got a few pals who do the moves like the fella there in the skimpy outfit. I bet Starmer would have loved this, but not really very Labour Party, unfortunately. You came at the wrong time, Keir, I'm afraid to say. So there's a lot of this stuff going on, a lot of backing from musicians and the whole kind of lovey crowd that you might expect, and a fairly reasonable turnout. So actually they only got 500,000 people. They're saying 500,000. They're claiming 500,000. And considering the fact that this has been in the offing for 6 months, they've had 6 months run at this, and they've had full backing from all of the organisations you can see there, the unions, celebrities. This is essentially the establishment's official countermarch to the awful far right. I don't think that they pulled a particularly big crowd, to be honest with you. Now, the organisations involved, as we talked about, we've got a few here: Stop the War Coalition, the Campaign for Nuclear Disarmament, a lot of sort of 1980s throwback organisations that you can see here. The really telling thing about this still image for me is the fact that UN flag is right at the top. You know, so the UN they view as the absolute pinnacle that should be driving policy internationally, and we'll talk more about that as we go through the show. But we can also see here that this is absolutely a Palestine aligned march, and for that very reason, there were certain people in London who are feeling very threatened and very left out by all of this. Let's have a little listen to Keith Black, the chair of the Jewish Leadership Council, talking to GB News.
What do you think this has to say about this particular march, that they don't seem all that open towards Jewish groups?
Yeah, well, it's extraordinary, isn't it? The Together Alliance. Well, who is in this Together Alliance? I certainly haven't had a call to join it. Nobody's been on the phone to me to say, please come along. And I think we know why that is, because it's not a Together Alliance. It's billed as an anti-far right alliance, but that's just a disguise. That's a cloak. This is a Islamic, I'm afraid, and a left-wing march that is against Jewish life. And we've seen this for 2.5 years now. Regular protests through our streets, screaming Jew hatred, talking about globalizing the Intifada, calling for the extinction of Israel. So there's no real wonder why they haven't called us.
Now, obviously, there's one group of people that have suffered most at the hands of the far right throughout history, and that group is obviously Jews. So you would have thought the first people anyone organising a march against the far right would call is Jewish organisations.
Yes. Well, we've been involved in those battles for decades against the far right. And we fought them back famously at Cable Street in the 30s and beyond. Those battles have been won and been fought. But this isn't about really the far right. This is a much broader coalition of people who have got a much deeper agenda, I'm afraid. And it's very demoralizing for Jewish people when we see this happening. And in particular, we're going to see this alliance, this march, take place really close to one of our main synagogues in the centre of London. And it is likely that Jews will not be able to pray in that synagogue on tomorrow morning because there would just be too much intimidation.
Well, Jew hate.
It's quite incredible. Ben, in my mind, goes back to the really, really large Palestine demonstration. Mike Robinson and myself went up to London. And
that's the first time I met you.
Indeed. There was about 2,500 people in Trafalgar Square, all for Palestine, many, many Muslims. And in the middle of Trafalgar Square was a group of Jewish people, Jews for Peace. And when I said to them, do you feel threatened? They said, no, everybody around us has been lovely. And we then had a discussion with them. We took some audio, surrounded by the people that this man would have us believe are all out to kill Jews. It's complete nonsense. But the narrative, and GB News here helping this twisted narrative to come across.
Yeah, right.
It's amazing.
I mean, he could. I'm sure that he didn't write those questions, but if he had written the questions, they couldn't have been any better, really, could they? And also, there were loads of Jews on the march, right? So this was actually from the official social media account of the Together March, and also there's a load of Jewish organisations organising this thing. So I'm afraid, Mr. Black from the Jewish Leadership Council, you need to extend your networks into the Jewish community a little bit more effectively than you have been doing, because if I can skip down here a little bit, well, first of all, we come to a load of lovies. Sir Lenny Henry, he's suffered because of racism, hasn't he? Sir Lenny Henry, the multi-millionaire who's been on the BBC for my entire life. Must have been really difficult. Who else have we got? There's a bunch of stuff messaging about how compassionate and wonderful everyone behind this thing is. But then if we come down to here, I mean, look at the organisations involved. The one that really caught my eye is this one. Organisation called Choose Love. And I came across this because of some reporting by Vanessa Beeley and David Miller recently for Palestine Declassified, which basically highlights the fact that Choose Love is working with Zionist organisations in Israel. It's helped to coordinate regime change operations in Syria via the White Helmets, who we've reported on extensively previously over the years, going back to about 2015, 2016, if I remember remember correctly. And Choose Love receives funding from Open Societies Foundation, the New Israel Fund, and organizations like the Rockefeller Brothers Fund, which is quite notoriously essentially a CIA slush fund. It's just passing money through. So all of these organizations are Zionist. Choose Love is basically aligned to and backed by Zionist organizations. They're helping to coordinate this march. So it would seem that not only are Jews safe to go on the march, there's also people of that background helping to coordinate it and also develop a lot of the key messaging, because that Choose Love thing is absolutely everywhere, right? And we've talked about this a lot previously, this divide and rule, how it gets pushed down into society through the media, through our culture. And this is just another example of the same thing happening again. I spoke probably about 18 months, maybe even 2 years ago, about George Soros's role in helping to create Paul Marshall from GB News. That's actually how Paul Marshall made a bunch of his money originally, through his hedge fund, Marshall Wace. It's because George Soros gave him $25 million to become a money manager for him. So essentially he has created Marshall and GB News and that entire network, including the short clip there that we just watched with the gentleman from the Jewish Leadership Council, while at the same time putting money via Open Society Foundations into left-wing organisations like Choose Love, which is people like Missan Harriman on its board, which then creates this chaos in society, because you have these two polar opposites that are positioned against each other, that have a political apparatus around them, that have street game through these protests and things that are not even the coordinated stuff, like these ongoing protests that are happening around the country on a weekly basis. And that drives us into a state of chaos and makes us easier to control. And it's all coordinated at the very top level, if we can get that back on screen, by people like George Soros. I'm not saying it's just George Soros. I'm just pointing out that in this instance, this is absolutely applicable. Another example of this, without wanting to labour the point too much, this is essentially what we're seeing here play out is something else that I reported on back in 2024. So this was 18 months ago in October 24, and we'll provide links. You can go and look at these reports from back then. And this was Daniel Sachs. Speaking at Global Progress Action in Canada. Sachs is the Open Society Foundation investment chief. So he actually directs funding for open societies, for the Soros family. And he's talking about these two competing energy fields, a tug of war between two main drivers of political engagement. One is the rising support of authoritarianism, what we could think of as the right. And the other is the mobilization of young voters, especially young women, in protection of the fundamental values of democracy. And we can think about that as left. And this has been constructed. And he was talking about this for quite some time before that speech, this idea that there's an ideology gap opening up between young men and women in countries across the world. But the most important thing about this to understand is that it's deliberate. Right? This has been constructed. And I'll put another link to this Substack article, which basically points out the increase in divisive terminology coming from titles like the New York Times and the Washington Post over a period of about 10 and 50 years. So this increase in the use of terms like patriarchy, gender discrimination, sexism, white supremacy. It's been a huge uptick since 2010, which ultimately I believe is a smoking gun to prove that this whole thing is essentially a manufactured crisis. That's what we're looking at here, playing out on the streets of the UK. And what's that leading us towards? So, well, we've got the organisations and the events happening on the right-hand side. So United Kingdom and all the other political figures that I talked about at the start of the report. You've got the left wing on the left-hand side, Together Alliance and all the people associated with that. And then you've also got in the midst of this thing, which I spoke about a month ago, which is the Together Coalition, founded in 2019 by Justin Welby, former Archbishop of Canterbury, who had to resign because he was protecting paedophiles, and Brendan Cox, who's a World Economic Forum young global leader. And that's overseen by this thing, the Independent Commission on Community and Cohesion, which itself is co-chaired by Sajid Javid, aka Savage Jabed, who was the health minister, or one of them, during COVID, and John Cruddas, who, amongst other things, I found out over the weekend, was formerly a director of Hope Not Hate.
Indeed.
Yeah. So the strings go all the way up, and this chaos is going to drive us into some kind of event, something that they've got cooking around this Together Coalition and the Independent Commission on Community and Cohesion. And it's going to be a hot summer, I think. We can put it like that.
And of course, people immediately say, well, if this is what is happening, this is what is being done, what do we do about it? And the simple answer to that is, one, expose it, as we are doing at the moment. These organisations have got to be challenged everywhere as to what they're really standing for and what they're trying to achieve by divide and rule. And people have got to speak to each other. So don't take the label and the banner in the street. Go up, approach, speak to other people, because it's the link between humanity which actually pulls down what these people are trying to do. We'll discuss this more in extra, but this is a key point. So at the moment, every headline is about economic disaster. And of course, a lot of this comes directly back to what's happening with the strangulation of oil in the Gulf. And what happens in the Straits of Hormuz is going to have a huge impact on economic policy and prices here in UK, paying $1.85 a litre for diesel at the pumps over the weekend. That's going to increase. Manufacturing costs go up. So we've got to stay focused also on what's happening in the Gulf and who is actually driving the war. So let's have a little listen to Nir Barkat, the Israeli Minister for the Economy, speaking. He was being interviewed by the BBC.
You've said the US and Israel are aligned on this war. Are you aligned on this proposal?
You're gonna, let's leave it vague. But one thing, it's very, very clear: the Americans and Israelis, Prime Minister Netanyahu and President Trump, are aligned with accomplishing those goals.
So Israel had a hand in drawing up this deal. So from what you've said, you know that you're very unlikely to get this deal from Iran.
Unfortunately, I probably agree with you.
Iran seems to be gaining some leverage in this war.
I think it's exactly the opposite. I think the world is recognizing who the bully is, who the threat is.
So if Iran doesn't have any leverage, why did President Trump back away from his ultimatum on the Strait of Hormuz?
Look, President Trump is a good negotiator. He knows how to negotiate. He's a businessman. So is Netanyahu. And give them that leeway to get those objectives.
So that interview was against the backdrop of Trump saying that he was going to seize Kharg Island, and the smirk from that gentleman was just incredible, because obviously Israel is key to ramping up what the Americans do under Trump, and it appears to be more and more the case that it's Israel in control. The smirk to me said it all. He knew absolutely that Israel is not going to calm the situation down. They want the war and they want America to pay for it. Let's have a look at BBC reporting here. So this was the headline earlier this morning. Trump said he's considering seizing Iran's Kharg Island, but a deal could be made very quickly. So the blackmail is to the Iranians that if you don't play the game, we are going to take control of Kharg Island. And of course, it's through Kharg Island that Iran exports its oil and makes its money. But there's a lot that the BBC doesn't share here. So let's get into the background. And we need to go to this man, General Yoav Gallant, former defense minister of Israel. And in his blog, he says how to finish the job in Iran. So let's have a look at this. The key part is that he's saying we do that by seizing and squeezing Iran's choke point, and that is Kharg Island. So this is some of the detail. When you face this level of operational complexity, you do not solve it by chasing every weapon system. You change the enemy's calculation. You must take from Iran something it cannot afford to lose. The first and most obvious target that meets that standard is Kharg Island. the main terminal for close to 90% of Iran's crude oil exports. It's the economic backbone of the region. It's also critically the primary source of hard currency revenues for the military and security services, which control and sell a significant share of those exports. So this is the twist of the knife that apparently is Iran only sells oil to pay for military and the security services. Absolute nonsense, but this is the way the man thinks. And if we go on here, disrupting energy operations on Kharg Island is regarded by analysts as a doomsday scenario for Iran's economy with far-reaching consequences. Economic pressure on this scale would dramatically increase the likelihood of popular unrest. Iran's population has repeatedly demonstrated its willingness to take to the streets, and the demonstrations of January 2026 were one of the most significant since the 1979 revolution. So Israel, absolutely after regime change here, they do not want peace, even with the economic chaos it's causing for the rest of the world. And here he says something interesting. Yes, there are risks. Any operation to seize Kharg would require thousands of troops, sustained air and naval support and detailed intelligence, and it would carry a real and expected cost in human life. Iran would also target every reachable energy facility across the Gulf, a campaign already underway. And of course, what this man does not say is that the lives lost will be US Marines, they'll be American lives, and they will not be IDF forces. So unbelievably cynical. But here we see, and we can understand the smirk of the Israeli Minister of Economy, because it's clearly well known that the drive for this taking of Kharg Island is coming from within Israel, and America and the US Marines are just going to be the toys to carry it out. It's horrific stuff here, Ben. And I'll just remind people that it takes RT to come up and remind people that back in the day, the US was working directly with terrorists in Syria on Israel's behalf. Washington colluded with Al-Qaeda and ISIS in Syria to topple Bashar Assad, Joe Kent has revealed. So this is very heavy stuff. And I'll just end here by saying that when you get into detail about what actually took place on the USS Gerald R. Ford, the huge American aircraft carrier, this headline highlights that the laundry fire was so bad the Navy had to strip 1,000 mattresses from America's next aircraft carrier to replace them. Now, if you don't understand the significance of this, or just bring in a bit more detail, the reality was one sailor injured but now stable, but 200 smoke inhalation casualties. And then we've got the 1,000 mattresses. And this detailed report from 1945, as the website's called, is also talking about major damage control effort. So this was a substantial fire on board the ship, and smoke damage in the confined spaces of a warship, immensely dangerous, not only to individuals, to people, but also to delicate equipment, because the smoke can cause huge damage to computer-based systems, aside from its carcinogenic effects on the sailors themselves. So without doubt, things not going well for the Americans, and this was a big blow to the Gerald R. Ford, notwithstanding it was not an Iranian attack. Well, let's move on and just remind people about UK Columns magazine, the column. So that is going to be on its way to those who've already ordered. If you haven't ordered one, have a look at the detail on the UK Column website and get your order in, because this is a really fantastic magazine, a lot of information, and so relevant and pertinent to what's happening around us today. Now, also, we want to remind people that if you're not a member of UK Column, we need your financial support to not only keep going, but to expand. So if you're listening to us and you haven't joined the community, please get onto the UK Column website and join us. That would be a big boost. Now, this is the key announcement today, that tickets for our 20th on location, our 20th anniversary, which will be in Plymouth, 18th to the 20th of September. Tickets will be available this coming Thursday. That's the 2nd of April, 2026. It's going to be a fantastic event. Members, you've all asked us for a 2-day event, so this is why we're doing it over the weekend. And it's going to be great to be able to meet people here in our home base of Plymouth. Ben, it's going to be really special.
I can't wait.
Yeah, it's going to be good.
Well, it's my mum's birthday as well. She'll be happy about that.
Well, there you are. Okay, now coming up tonight at 7 p.m, we've got Germ Warfare Edition, Is China Expansionist? Tonight at 9 p.m, we've got Carl Zar, Iran is decolonizing West Asia and the US empire is crumbling in real time. Both of those will be very interesting. And coming out tomorrow at 1 p.m, we've got Mike Robinson's interview here with Cliff Kirikovy, the latest crusade, Christian Zionism, the Israel lobby and the war on Iran. So that's quite a package of information coming out, Ben. And I think there are still many people who believe that UK Column is a much, much bigger team than it really is. So it's a credit to everybody who's part of that team at the moment that so much information comes out. But please share it and spread the word. That's the, the key point of getting the information out there. Now, let's turn to the subject of veterans. And this is one of interest to me because, yes, I served, as they say, for 21 years in the Royal Navy. And of course, we've seen, particularly the Labour government, what's it been doing? Creeping up to the veterans, I think. But is their veterans strategy something which is genuinely compassionate concerning the veterans, or is there another political agenda? Well, before we just answer that question, let's have a look at their little promo video, which I have to say did make me wince.
If you've served this country, you deserve support that works for you. That's why I'm so pleased to announce the first network of government-funded veteran centres across the UK. This is part of our £50 million Valour programme, designed to make it easier for our veterans to get the care and support they need. We're investing over £13 million into 14 existing veteran centres across the UK, giving them up to £1 million each. They'll provide in-person support for veterans in their area, connecting people with specialist support across health, housing, employment and more. Valour has got several parts, recognised centres like these where veterans can access multiple services in one place, and there'll also be support available online and through dedicated case managers for those who can't get to a centre. Valour field officers will be on the ground, building real connections between local charities, councils and other service providers. And Valour HQ, based in the Office for Veterans Affairs, will work to bring the whole system together. Valour isn't about replacing the incredible work that charities, councils and other services already do. It's about making sure that work is joined up and feeds into what we're doing at a national level. This is part of our 10-year veterans strategy. This is about renewing the contract with those who've served, investing in them and giving them the tools they need to thrive.
So there we are, Valour. This didn't fill me with enthusiasm, but I was curious as to why the government is putting so much effort into the veterans. This is part of the strategy document, the web page from gov.uk. So lots of emotive articles all about the veterans and the Office for Veterans Affairs. But in their document, there was this graphic that caught my attention. I immediately thought of you, Ben. We've got a pyramid here, ministerial oversight at the top. The next layer is UK cross-government coordination. So this is embedded across government. And then it's got a cross-sector coordinated delivery. So I just thought to myself, we've got a blatant pyramid of power control. This is a classic pyramid structure. And to answer the question for our viewers today, why the government is so keen on the veterans, the simple answer is because there are some 200 million and the government must get control of them.
2 million.
Sorry, what did I say?
200 million.
Well, what a shame there isn't 200
That'd be good,
million.
wouldn't it?
Thank you for that little slip there, Ben. There are some 2 million veterans in UK. The government must get control of them to destroy their potentially decisive nationalist vote. And by using the word nationalist, I'm not saying extreme right wing, because overwhelmingly these people aren't, but they are a cohesive group of people that if they were to act together to take the lid off what's being done, as we're describing in this news, they would be a force to reckon with. So
and they know how to fight.
Absolutely. So what's happening is the government is getting amongst them in order to control them and make sure they're corralled into an appropriate direction. Now, if we had a bit of linkage with your segment earlier in the news, Ben, where you were talking about Jeremy Corbyn, let's just have a little listen to this interview with Jeremy Corbyn, where he says some extremely interesting things. Let's have a listen.
So Bernie Sanders was very close to the presidency. You, of course, we know what happened. You were very close to being prime minister. It does seem like there is limitations within the confines of the Democratic Party, obviously the Labour Party. It's amazing that you left and that you started your own left party. We see what the Democratic Party is doing to Mamdani in New York. What is your message to people outside of electoralism? Of course, it's important, but clearly not the only path.
Politics comes from lots of things, but basically it comes from the power of community and the power of organisation of workers in their own communities. And what I was trying to do as leader of the Labour Party was to turn the Labour Party into a community organising machine. And I appointed community organisers and started down that road. It was the greatest opposition I got to anything within the Labour Party hierarchy was community organising, because they felt threatened by it. The other greatest opposition I got from the establishment was essentially my world and global view, because what they did not want was somebody like me on the UN Security Council expressing my view that the occupation of Palestine has to end, for example, that nuclear weapons are an abomination of the highest possible order. And if we want to live in a peaceful world, we should stop spending $2.5 trillion a year on arms and start converting over to a different process.
Well, I hope our viewers and listeners were actually listening carefully to what Jeremy Corbyn said, because he really gave some significant information. He was trying to get in amongst the community. He was trying to get in amongst the workers in order to get his Labour policies embedded in society, and he was going to use community organisers to do that. Then he says, well, the hierarchy of the party didn't like that, but of course they would have liked it if they were in control of the agenda that was going to be injected into the community layers, and that was the key problem. Plus, he was against war. And as we can see, from today's news, you have to be pro-war in order to be part of the global elite, because that's how their political agenda operates. So I found it fascinating, Ben, to hear what he said then. And I also remembered, of course, that was Labour, but we had previously David Cameron with Big Society.
Doing his community organising thing, using communist principles, which people find really difficult to understand. No, I think what that whole thing revealed is that Corbyn is actually fundamentally a decent guy. I think
naive.
But naive, and actually he the direction of travel that he's going down, he used the term his global worldview, this kind of internationalist thing, this drive towards a single global superstate coordinated out of the UN is just as much globalism as the World Economic Forum stitching up all international economic activity and industrial output into a tiny group of multinationals. It's basically just the other side of the coin. And what I've noticed particularly over the past month or two, as these left-wing voices are being pushed more and more by the establishment and into the mainstream, like Corbyn and Polanski, is that actually they're not operating at a national level. They don't think at a national level. They don't coordinate at a national level. They are working internationally. And I don't think that most people in the UK, whether you're on the left or the right, really understand the extent to which that is the case. So over the weekend, I bought a newspaper. Do you remember those?
I do.
Yes. And this one...
There used to be a very good one called the UK Column, actually. But
oh, right. Okay. I've heard of that. Yeah. Well, maybe they'll fire it up again at some point. Who knows? But anyway, I bought this one because it was the one available, and it was the Morning Star, and it is very socialist, probably communist, although they don't like to use that word. And they talk about, on the front here, this new alliance marching in London today, which vows unity against the far-right hatred, which is what we talked about in the report earlier, and it's talking about that... that exact march is what they're referring to. And this alliance, which is this lot, most notably in this image, and this is from the video I showed from the protest earlier, Corbyn and Polanski and various associated others. But these two are absolutely front and centre in this new coalition that is forming against the far right. And it is a global coalition, right? These two, they're having a bit of a bromance at the moment, Polanski and Corbyn, standing in solidarity with each other, fellow travellers on the journey towards socialist utopia. These are all terms that, get bandied around, and they've been hanging around a lot on the march, but also at this event, which happened a couple of weeks ago at the Troxy in East London, which was hosted by Yanis Varoufakis. You can see on the left-hand side there, who was actually on the news, UK Column News. We used a clip, I think Basil used a clip of him talking about Palantir, and he's absolutely on the money about certain issues. So on Palantir, I believe that Varoufakis and I would probably be very well aligned. And he's leading this talk here, Resistance is Existence, with Corbyn, Polanski and Grace Blakely, who is a liberal, progressive commentator. And it's all been done under the auspices of this thing, DM25, which is a pan-European political party established in 2016 by Yanis Varoufakis. And to cut a long story short, because there's a lot about this, and it's been around for over 10 years now, essentially this is a neo-Marxist type organisation. They talk about this idea of democratisation. Europe will be democratised once the oligarchy is overthrown. So we've got to tear down the oligarchy, which essentially is capitalism, and replace it with something that is democratised, that is essentially communism, communitarianism, this whole thing that's being progressed by the liberal left at the moment. And they are very active, very busy, quite verbose, as you'd expect from a bunch of lefties. They've got a cultural policy, which includes a separate organisation called Meta CPC, the culture of post-capitalism, where they're promoting culture which they describe as critical and challenging. So this is this kind of cultural Marxism idea, the idea that culture should be critical and challenging. It shouldn't be creative and constructive, for example. It has to tear things down, not build things up. That's really an important part of this. They've also got a security policy, which essentially amounts to global peace being enforced by the United Nations. The UN, which is controlled by the oligarchy. Right, and this is the problem with a lot of the policies that they're putting across here. In their economic policy, they talk about having a universal basic income and having all economic activity mediated via a central bank, a global central bank, again, which is oligarch policy. And this is the issue that a lot of socialists don't seem to understand, is that they're driving towards things which the people that they're supposedly fighting against want to happen too. So centralisation of all financial activity under the Bank of International Settlements, or DM25, are asking for basically that outcome. If you don't think that the oligarchy, like the UN, you don't know anything about the UN, because it's completely controlled by global oligarchs through supposedly charitable foundations like the Rockefeller Foundation, the Gates Foundation, whatever it might be. That's how the UN is controlled, and it has been for at least 30 years. And actually, if you go back even to its formulation, it was established with the full backing of the Rockefeller family, the Council on Foreign Relations were involved, all that kind of thing, right? So the idea that the UN is the solution to the problems that we face, I think is a bit far-fetched. And the big thing that they're really pushing is this, which is this Green New Deal. They want to completely transform the economic system. We need change. The planet's burning. Fridays for Future there, that's Greta Thunberg's thing. The people want change. We have the solutions. It's good. The green collar jobs. You heard that term? The Green New Deal, green homes, green income. This is the deal. This is what we're progressing. And if you listen to Zach Polanski's economic speech, which he gave at the New Economic Foundation last week before, in fact, essentially what they're talking about doing is taking out a load of debt, going to the bond markets, and then using that to buy technology from international corporations who aren't based in this country, and to move us towards this new technological paradigm that is completely electrified, built on supposedly sustainable technologies, which is nothing of the sort, and is actually the ultimate agenda of the oligarchy and the United Nations and what have you. And this democracy, supposed socialism, is the vehicle through which a lot of this is being progressed. We'll talk about this a lot more because this is absolutely crucial. This is, as I say, the direction of travel for particularly young people, right? And this is what they're pushing through the schools and through the culture. And it's not just at a European level; it's happening at a global level as well, not least through this organisation, Progressive International, which was founded in 2020 and was originally backed by Bernie Sanders, who got a little mention in your clip that you showed there of Corbyn, which we didn't prepare earlier. So there was a nice coming together of the stories
there.
Exactly.
And thank you very much for that. So while all eyes are focused on the horrors of the wars, whether it's Ukraine or against Iran, this is what is manipulating policy in this country, and it's lifting the stones, identifying it for what it is and calling it out. That makes the difference. So you can do something about it, but it requires a lot of people to act. Now, I'm just going to end the coverage today of Iran with the fact that clearly the BBC has a problem because all is not going well for Israel. Wall Street Journal here with a pretty potent headline: Israel is rationing its best interceptors and Iran's missiles are getting through. So there's no misunderstanding what's going on there. And basically the Israelis have had to ration their high-end missile interceptors. But there's a daily Iranian barrage which is coming through. So the Wall Street Journal saying it absolutely black and white. I've put it in red for you. Daily Iranian barrages that haven't let up through 4 weeks of war. So the Iranians are clearly still operating, and those missiles are flying. Now, we bring on screen this little box. You won't be able to read it. What is this? Well, we'll expand it because it's the Ministry of Defence's propaganda site, Defence HQ. And what it's talking about here is the Royal Navy, British Army and Royal Air Force personnel working, quote, seamlessly together to deliver integrated air defence in the Middle East. Well, they might be producing integrated air defence in the Middle East, but clearly that air defence is not working because even the BBC is now having to report the hits on Israel. And indeed, today there are 2 little video clips on the BBC website showing 2 of those hits. So basically, it's clear that Iran has not been beaten despite Trump's rhetoric, and he is under pressure himself. I've gone to the Kiev Post here, a fact check, not a very good fact check, but it gives us something to talk about because they're unhappy that Trump has said that Ukraine is the cause of US ammunition shortages with respect to Iran. So they've decided to see if he's telling the truth. They ultimately say he isn't, but they do provide some good statistics. And essentially here, it says that the United States probably transferred to Ukraine somewhere between 500 and 800 Patriots. That's between 2022 and 2024. And that Lockheed Martin produces about 550, 650 new missiles every year, not just for Ukraine, but for all customers. And then if we go on through the article a bit more, it points out that the number of Patriots launched against an incoming Iranian attack can range between 800 and 1,200 missiles. Now, I don't believe this figure because it seems to be very, very high to me. But in any case, what they're saying is that roughly twice the number of interceptor missiles delivered to Ukraine over 4 years has been expended by the US and its allies in less than a month. So make of that what you will. What is clear is that Iran is still very much fighting, despite the claims of Donald Trump and despite action by British military. And of course, we've got Israel in the background wanting to ramp up the violence because it's taking the hits. And the people who are going to suffer, aside from the Iranians and Israelis themselves, are people who are going to suffer through a reduction in global economy. So troubled times, but clear that things in the Middle East absolutely not as being claimed by Donald Trump and Keir Starmer. So we'll end, Ben, with the BBC, which I've quite rightly been attacking here in today's news for their appalling journalism and reporting, but we can see some more devious things happening behind the scenes, I think.
Yeah, a little bit. Yes, we're going to just touch on something that Basil brought up on Friday, which is that Matt Britton has been selected as the next BBC Director General. And this is a really important appointment, I think. He's British, thankfully. He was made a CBE 2 months ago, so he's very much a company man, part of the furniture in the top levels of the establishment. But he ran Google in Europe for basically 15 years. Right. So when Google was in its big expansion mode and driving a huge transformation of not just the European economy, but the global economy, he was responsible for the European component of it through digitization, the introduction of new platforms like the search business and YouTube and whatnot. He was in the driving seat for probably the most important market in that period outside of the US, right? So this is absolutely a big tech guy. He would have been in charge through COVID. He would have been there when they set up the Trusted News Initiative, which was their whole censorship program working alongside the BBC and Telegraph and CNN and what have you. He would have been overseeing YouTube when we were booted off YouTube. Yeah, so absolutely, he was part of that whole agenda. And I had a couple of clips I wanted to just show you, a couple of images from his leaving do, because it gives you a sense of like how closely knit the top levels of the media and the technology industry are in the UK. So that's his leaving do. It's about a year ago now. And then sitting at one of the top tables, who have we got? Oh, look, there's Tim Davie.
It's just a coincidence.
That's Tim Davie, yeah. So actually, the guy that whose job you're taking was at your leaving do, and you obviously know him quite well. And he's sitting next to there, just to the left of Tim Davie as we're looking at the image. That's Debbie Weinstein, who now runs Google, who's taken Matt Britton's job. So this is just a tiny little group circulating.
Revolving door.
Absolutely. It is a revolving door. And then also finally, and we should do some more on this because there's a lot around this whole crowd, is that actually Davie's already got a new job. And he's going to be the chair of the Creative Industries Council, which basically oversees the film industry, music, advertising, craft, like anything to do with creativity coming out of the UK, which is one of our primary industries, right? We talk about the creative industry a lot. He's now going to be in charge of that. He's going to be overseeing it, having been booted out of the BBC in disgrace.
Allegedly, or perhaps moved out. With
or should I say, did he have to resign? I mean, he didn't cover himself in glory, did he?
No. And what have we got there? We've got to correct. If we just pop that up on screen, something I always pay attention to is the corruption of the Union flag there, which is already very significant to me. We see it in black on the shoulders of police in UK, so that is a corruption. That's actually should be regarded as an insult to the nation, but here it's used in a very casual way. We must end there. Ben, thank you very much. I'll say to our audience, pretty heavy UK column news today, but we needed to do it because many people getting into a little bit of a frazzle with an increase in the fuel prices. We're seeing prices in the shops go up, talk of the war in Iran and, of course, still in Ukraine, and a lot of uncertainty and chaos. Relax, it's being engineered, and when you can see how it's being engineered, you can see who is engineering it, and it's exposure of those people that's part of the key to stopping the madness of what's going on. And I think we should end by saying that at the end of the day, in these troubled times, we all need as many possible people to be our friends, and we should be regarding people from the outset as a potential friend, not a potential enemy, because this is the key thing to break down this divide and rule tactic. So if you meet a stranger, just try talking to them and understand a bit more about them, because that will be strengthening the fight against this terrible rules-based international order that would have each and every one of us against the other. We'll end there. Thanks, Ben. We were sorry, I should just end on UK column news. We'll be back at the same time, 1 o'clock on Wednesday. See you then. Bye-bye.